Orbital Drop Shock Troopers, aka ODSTs, were first introduced to Halo fans in Halo the Flood, the novelization of Halo CE, though far more probably met them during Halo 2. Ever since, ODSTs have been an iconic staple of Halo arguably as much as Spartans. So iconic are they that Bungie even made a game with ODSTs as playable characters. Their impact cannot be understated, which made their absence in Halo 4 all the more conspicuous. The previous 4 titles, 5 if you include Halo Wars, had all featured ODST characters, so people began to wonder, where are the ODSTs? With so many fans who only engaged with the games, it was theorized and became something of an accepted truth that most ODSTs were brought into the Spartan 4 program. This myth was likely also born out of a desire to defend the Spartan 4s to some degree, but I digress. Even today, the myth persists, and while no single video will ever stop it, I thought I might as well address it. And to make things more interesting, we're going to dive into the complete history of the ODSTs. What we know today as the Orbital Drop Shock Troopers was founded even before the formation of the UNSC. Founded in 2129 by the United Nations, the earliest form of orbitally deployed Marines were the drop jet platoons, created as humanity began to expand and settle the solar system. Their service and history is still shrouded in mystery, but what we would consider true ODSTs were first seen only a few decades later. By the 2160s, a series of wars had broken out among humanity, with revived fascist and communist movements warring with the United Nations over control of the solar system. To fight these escalating threats, the UN created the United Nations Space Command in 2163 along with the Orbital Drop Shock Troopers, seeing their first action that year against the communist Kosleviks in the Mars campaign. Conflict continued to escalate with the start of the Interplanetary Wars in 2164, which finally ended in 2170 with the signing of the Callisto Treaty. This left the UN and its unified Earth government in charge of human governance across space, and the UNSC as the main military might of humanity. After the conclusion of the Interplanetary Wars, the collective focus of humanity shifted from war towards other problems facing the species such as overpopulation, famine, and a now massive military with little purpose. It wouldn't be until the onset of the insurrection in the late 25th century that ODSTs would see regular action again. With the upswing in anti-Earth activity in the 2490s, the Office of Naval Intelligence resurrected an old project from more than a century prior, Orion. Though the Orion project of the early 24th century produced few results, ONI hoped that advances in technology might produce better super soldiers. Orion Phase 2 did produce impressive results, with over 300 active Orion personnel at the project's height, but it was ultimately shut down due to various shortcomings. However, one of the side effects of the project was a re-evaluation of the ODSTs. Using the Orion project as a model, the ODSTs were restructured with new standards, training, and more. Though ODSTs would never receive augmentations like Orion candidates, their special armor, training, and operations ensured a revitalized reputation for the organization going into the 26th century. By the height of the insurrection, the ODST organization was massive. At least 4 divisions were known to have existed, including the 65th Shock Troops Division, of which Gunnery Sergeant Edward Buck would be a later member, and the 105th Shock Troops Division. Fun fact, only members of the 105th are known as Helljumpers. ODSTs recruit from across the UNSC, not just the Marine Corps, including transfers from Colonial Militia. A strictly volunteer force, no ODST is ever truly green, always coming with at least some experience in the battlefield and months of training. After physical and mental requirements are confirmed, candidates will enter another phase of training, a final screening in essence, before becoming fully fledged ODSTs. The ODSTs have a number of organization-exclusive gear, though the most iconic in-universe and out would be their armor and the single-occupant exo-atmospheric insertion vehicle, or drop pods. Being orbital drop troopers, ODSTs were best known for being sent into battle in drop pods from orbit. The pods made for more difficult targets to hit, while also ensuring the loss of one wouldn't result in the loss of several troops. As the pods often dropped through a planet's atmosphere, they would heat up inside, sometimes fatally so. The heat resulted in the saying that ODSTs drop feet first into hell. The pods hit the ground hard, the front cover blown away by explosive bolts, and ODSTs are expected to be ready to get out and fight as soon as they're on the ground. It's a high-risk job, but one the ODSTs take immense pride in. ODST armor can come in a number of forms depending on mission and situation. There are fully vacuum-capable battle dress uniforms, which we see in most of the Halo games, and specialized armor such as those seen by Alpha 9 in Halo 3 ODST, or the armor worn by Fireteam Raven in their titular game. ODSTs would serve in a number of roles, including deep ground surveillance and long-range recon, surveying enemy forces behind enemy lines, direct action, usually short-duration strikes and small-scale offensives, unconventional warfare such as guerrilla tactics and other paramilitary operations, counter-terrorism and counter-contraband operations, and personnel and special equipment recovery and/or capture. With the onset of the Human Covenant War in 2525, ODSTs would be more necessary than ever to fight off the alien hegemony while also continuing counterinsurgency activity. Even with the onset of the war, units like the 10th Shock Troops Battalion would find themselves deployed against insurrectionists on Jericho 7 and Arcadia. However, the Covenant would continue to demand more and more of the UNSC's attention. The war also brought the Spartan II program to the forefront, with Spartans regularly assigned to work alongside ODSTs. Seeing the apparent special treatment and equipment the Spartans received, a resentment of the green-clad giants began to arise within ODST culture. ODSTs had always been the best humanity could produce, but now there was competition. Serious competition. When the Spartan II program was formally revealed to the public in 2547, Gage Yevgeny, formerly of the Harvest Militia and then ODST, remarked, "The ODSTs weren't the cutting-edge hardasses anymore. I'd just seen the future of warfare. I wasn't it." Future Spartan 4 Edward Buck would remark later in life too, "Back when I was a Marine, they always struck me as glory-hungry bullet catchers." Relations likely weren't helped by rumors that a young Spartan had once killed 2 ODSTs in a boxing ring, among other unsavory chatter. This one-sided rivalry never interfered with operational ability, however, with ODSTs and Spartans regularly working together throughout the war, and ODSTs themselves proving time and again just how capable they were. In April 2526, the over 800 ODSTs of the 21st Space Assault Battalion, better known as the Black Daggers, worked alongside Spartan Teams Blue, Green, and Gold in Operation Silent Storm to take out Covenant ships and buy time for humanity to develop some counters for the Covenant. The operation resulted in most of the battalion being killed, with its remnants reassigned to other ODST groups. Following the formal adaptation of the Cole Protocol in 2535, ODSTs would find themselves deployed to board commercial and private vessels to erase navigational data, per the protocol. By 2552, with the war going poorly, many across the UNSC who might have otherwise been discharged due to behavioral or personality issues would remain in service, such as the flirtatious Kojo Romeo Agu. Anyone that could fight would remain in the fight, especially when the Covenant found Reach, and eventually Earth. During the battle for Reach, ODSTs were key participants in early battles with the invading Covenant before the final invasion of August 30th and the fall of Reach. Bullfrog air assault units of the 22nd Shock Troops Battalion would help defend the city of New Alexandria, while other elements of the 105th supported anti-Covenant operations across Reach. Countless ODSTs would lose their lives. ODSTs were also intended to play a key role in Operation Red Flag, alongside Spartan IIs, though the plan to capture Covenant leadership was put on hold as Reach began to fall. At Earth, elements of the 105th and other ODST divisions would participate in the opening battles against Regret. While most squads were engaged with the main Covenant force, a squad designated Alpha 5 were sent to recover an unknown artifact during the Battle of New Mombasa, while another squad were on a mission to retrieve valuable Covenant intel. In space, fire teams from the 65th Shock Troops Division were gathered to board the Prophet of Regret's carrier. One of these squads, Alpha 9, were commandeered by Oni for a special mission. ODSTs would prove invaluable too in other theaters during the final year of the war. At Installation 04, it was First Lieutenant Melissa McKay who destroyed a flood-infected Covenant ship that would otherwise have been brought back to Earth. ODST Fireteam Raven took up a suicide mission on the ring, fighting off a Covenant force that was attempting to stop the Chief from destroying Halo. And during the Battle of Installation 00, the final battle of the war, ODSTs would again be key in securing victory. With the war ended, the future of humanity looked uncertain, but hopeful for the first time in years. Unfortunately, it wasn't long before insurrectionist elements would re-emerge, and the ODSTs would be needed once again. While many members of the ODSTs would eventually be recruited into the emerging Spartan 4 program, with at least 4 divisions of troops, the ODSTs would always outnumber Spartans. And even in a world where Spartans could be mass-produced, ODSTs have their place. By the end of the Human Covenant War, Spartans had a reputation across human space, one that could push an insurrectionist in the wrong direction. ODSTs could act as a scalpel in some instances, where Spartans might otherwise be seen as blunt instruments. And from an Oni point of view, ODSTs remained infinitely cheaper than Spartans. But at the end of the day, the orbital drop shock troopers represent the best humanity has to offer without biological augmentation. It's genuinely sad that ODSTs have seen such a reduced focus in Halo media, especially in content set after the Human Covenant War. When Halo Wars 2's first campaign DLC was an ODST-themed side story, I was thrilled. And hopefully in the years to come, we might see the ODSTs, these iconic warriors of humanity, pop up again. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this overview of ODST history. And for anyone who was curious about where the ODSTs had gone after the Human Covenant War, and or what role they now play, I hope this answered some questions. As is often the case, the universe is a grand, expansive setting, and we only ever get to see a sliver of it at a time. What's absent from view isn't always absent from the larger picture, in other words. Stick around for the Patreon shoutouts. Until next time, this has been Halo Canon. First, I'd like to give a big thank you to our Harspice patrons. First, there's Hope, then we have Freight, SS Deco-chan, Discombobulated Sycophant, Justin Montgomery, Ada Frame, and Man in the Dark. Thank you all for your amazing support of the channel. Next, I'd like to thank our theoretical patrons. If you'd like to see your name here or get a direct shout out, check out patreon.com/halocanon. You can simply support the channel or get additional benefits such as behind the scenes materials, including raw audio for upcoming videos, or even shoutouts like this. All patrons now get early access to certain videos as well, and more benefits are to come. However, your continued viewership is more than enough for me. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and maybe even subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. If you really enjoy my stuff, turn on that notification bell so you can be among the first to see new videos when they release. But for all my fellow Canonites, keep on being awesome.